I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
If you have seen the video of the beating of Tyre Nichols, you were undoubtedly traumatized. A young man, a motorist in Memphis, was seen by the nation and the world getting beat to death by a squad of police officers. And even though they made noises like they were trying to subdue him and he was resisting arrest, video showed that there really was no reason for the continual beating. And of course, he tried to run for his life, and they tased him and sprayed him with pepper spray. It was savage. Now, even though the officers involved have been fired and charged with murder, this incident was even a step further than what we saw in the George Floyd killing, where we watched an officer slowly strangle a man to death. We see more and more graphic violence in the name of news. And even though the citizens have a right to be outraged and to demand that something be done, is it really serving our purpose to keep showing these graphic killings? Is it desensitizing us? Is it stirring up anger and rage without anywhere to channel it? Is it being focused on any new legislation or policy changes? Or are we just venting our frustration and waiting for yet another sensational video showing someone killed? Is this becoming voyeurism, or is it really promoting activism and leading to effective social change? Well, some people refused to watch it because they knew they didn't want that image in their minds. And others kept it on TV and social media, phones, iPads, laptops, in full view of the children. What impact do we think that's having, them watching this? Are we really thinking? Well, in taking a parent's point of view, let's think about, do we really need to keep watching murders videotaped? Sisters, what do you think?
I'll start. It count my pastor as one of the men, one of the people who refused to see it. My pastor is a Black man, and he says, I knew that my blood pressure would just go through the roof. So he chose not to see it. In the past, because there's so much what I call murder porn, and it's because the victims are almost always Black, Latino, or other people of color, that I had stopped seeing it. Tyree's mother wanted us to be witnesses. And Sean and I watched it on CNN, and it was kind of in real time because we were watching it as these things were being broadcast for the first time. And we talked about it, and we talked about how the police officers were already making things up. Oh, he was reaching for your gun. Oh, he's high. He must be high. As 23 minutes passed while the EMTs who had arrived by this time did absolutely nothing. And we talked about, and there is something, the First Amendment and freedom of the press and those kinds of things. There's all these things. And yes, we are right to be outraged, but we're also traumatized. And as you said, Naima, nothing is being done afterward. We talked about Emmett Till's mother wanting the world to see what had been done after her 14-year-old was brutally murdered. But we saw action coming out of that. After George Floyd was brutally murdered in full view of all these people gathered around who were pleading for the police officer to please get his knee off this man's neck. And we saw that. And yes, he did get convicted of murder, but only because it was videotaped. So that came out of that for those for that incident, but the George Floyd Police Reform Act has not happened. So do we keep showing these? And I even at one point, and I'm going to let Barbara get in here, but I even at one point said, okay, when it's white people, when it starts being white people being brutally beaten and tased and traumatized and neglected and dying right there, then the laws will change. But I'm not even sure about that because nothing happened after they let their white babies die at Sandy Hook. And
Yep.
except there was one black child, but all those, they were white babies, 6-year-olds that they allowed to die, and they never came back and did anything about the gun laws then. So I was saying, you know what? I know they don't care about our kids, but they don't care about their own kids. They don't care about their
Mhm.
own kids. So do we continue to bear witness? And do we take to the streets, not just taking to the streets, do we take to the streets in Washington? What are we going to do instead of just being witnesses? Barbara.
This is an unbelievable tragedy and travesty. And I think we need to point out that some of the rules that need to be changed apply all across the board because these were not white officers beating a brother. These were black police officers beating a brother. And so we have to take into account the fact that the rules need to be changed that apply across the board to everyone who decides that they want to be a police officer to serve and protect. You don't find this kind of thing in kids wanting to grow up and be a lawyer or a firefighter or some other servant. But why do people choose to be police officers in the first place? Do you have this innate feeling that you're going to make your neighborhood and your homeland a better place, a safer place, a kind place? You know, I have two incidences that I would like to recall, and both of them involve my son. When he was about in sixth grade, there was a half day at school, and I told him, come straight home. Don't be fooling around on the playground. Well, rumor had gotten around that there was a fight that was going to happen at another school. And John and his friends went to go and see the fight. Well, when they got to the neighboring school, the fight was over, and the police were on the scene, and they were arresting anyone who was on the playground, including parents. And John's friend said, quick, run. And so John and Oliver are taking off running away from the fight, but the police saw them, caught them, put them in the squad car, and brought them into the police station with the other boys, some who were involved in the fighting and some who weren't, but they were all arrested. So in feeling all these things out, and figuring out that my son was not involved. But it turned into a big mess anyway. They were there for several hours being questioned without either parent being there. Finally, when we got there and were able to see them and the kids were released, they said, oh, this record is going to be expunged because you're all minors. That isn't true. When my son became an adult and moved to Australia and had his family, all of this stuff came up when he was applying for residency in Australia, a record that supposedly was going to be expunged. And he was told that if he came up with $3,000, his record would be expunged. And that sounded a little underhanded. But then let me tell you about this incident that happened to my son when he was an adult. He was in Australia. I think he had a tail light out or something, and he was pulled over by the police officer. The police officer was almost bending over backwards in apologizing for having to pull John over. Oh, I'm sorry, mate, to have to pull you over, but I think your tail light's out, And he was so kind. And Lorelei, who happened to be there, actually reported the incident back to us and said, why aren't Chicago police officers like this? This man, he was so kind. He was so sweet. He apologized over and over for having to pull my son over. And then he said, if you promise to have this taken care of, I won't even write you a ticket. So clearly there is a different relationship between citizens in America and people who are officers of the law in America. There needs to be an attitude change. I don't care how many laws you change, how many gun laws that get passed or not passed. If there is not an attitude change, a heart change within the people in those positions, there is never going to be anything that's going to be any different. In fact, it's going to escalate. I think it is our duty to make things happen, not just by voting or marching or protesting. We need to come together as a community and make decisions that are going to start, maybe in a small way, make the kinds of changes that will implement an entire heart change.
I think it's more than just a heart change, though. As we said, these were all Black officers who did this. There were some others that were milling around. I don't know if you saw the video. You probably didn't. But, so as the one person who did, I can say that those 5 were not the only guilty parties. Neither were just the 2 EMTs. There are an awful lot of people, no supervisors, but an awful lot of people milling around for a long time doing absolutely nothing as this man was first beaten for 3 minutes with people. Now, understand, he was very tall, but he was very thin. He weighed less than me. So, and he was a foot taller. So he was
he had Crohn's disease. He was, battling that.
Yes. And he, and all of these police officers, they were all about 200 pounds or more. Some of them had played football. And for them to continue to beat him shows it's not about the color in the uniform. It is about the culture of the uniform. And that is the problem, is that not just Chicago police, all police in our country have less training than any other first world country. Some of them have 3 years of training and college degrees. Our police officers only need to have high school diplomas and 21 weeks of training. They also do a lot of weeks. They also do a lot of training on how every traffic stop could be your last. So they're already given this mindset. It's kind of a Clockwork Orange thing where they're constantly watching all of these things about cops being in danger, so that they're already going out hyped up thinking, okay, this could be my last, traffic stop. This person could come with a gun. But the thing is that traffic stops tend to be deadlier for civilians, especially Black civilians. The fact that my daughter, who is she's biracial, but she's very light skinned, but the fact that she knew this going in, saying, I'm afraid to drive because I'm afraid I'm going to get pulled over by the cops. We no longer see police officers as help. We see them as hindrance. We see them as deadly. We see them as people who will weaponize the color of our skin, or our national origin, or if we speak with an accent, as something that they will weaponize and that could get us killed.
You know,
and that's the culture of policing.
You know, I'm tend to agree with Barbara on this in terms of it's a matter of the heart. There is something inside of you that would make you enjoy beating someone to death.
Yes.
And if you are already damaged psychologically, then you're going to gravitate towards some type of profession that can allow you to bully people and brutalize people with impunity. That's inside of the person. I look at murder just like rape. It's a very personal crime that you have committed against another individual. It is a violation of another being, and something inside of you made you choose to do that. Now, I understand police are heavily conditioned with fear going out there and believing everybody is a potential threat. But there's a point where you know that this person was not a threat, and this person was not someone that you had to fear for your life. And there's 5 of you. So it was a deliberate sadistic act. And that sadistic nature is inside of the people who did it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether a person's brown who got beat to death or white that got beat to death, whether they had locks in their hair, whether they had straight hair. I mean, we keep trying to come up with things that trigger people to behave that way.
Yeah, and whether they were wearing
it was already in them. And
yeah,
and if we cannot, first of all, the whole idea of policing, at some point it will be abolished, because we will get to the point of realization that a civilized society does not need an occupying army. It does not need an authority with weapons towering over people, intimidating people. At some point, we'll get to the point of civilization where everybody is self-managed, and that is possible. But we have to know that that's where we're going, and that's where we have to go in order for us to choose to move in that direction. You can't have a society where some people are given the authority to kill and expect it's not going to attract people who have some kind of illness inside of them that would make them want to kill.
In other countries, the police officers don't carry guns.
Absolutely.
And the culture is very different, though.
Their culture. That's why I say it's the culture that's different, and the training that is different. But also, we have more militarized our police than ever before. We have made we have made weapons of war available to the police. Yes. And we've made it available to our citizenry.
Yes.
So we have become so enamored of guns and violence. And I'm gonna tell you, paradoxically, I am a big fan of police shows. Always have been, always will be. I probably watch all of them. But
we want to see Shema more.
But if we, but they, you know what, they tend to be a lot more where they will negotiate in some of these shows. But still, if you really start watching
that anyway.
Well, if you start watching objectively and see the body count on these police shows and all these bad guys that get shot dead, nobody goes and talks to anybody after. They're just fine. And these bad guys had families too. You never worry. They never seem to be psychologically affected by taking a life. And that is the thing. And I think because police in this country came from the slave catchers, that this is
the same psychology
that has come, and it has come from, because police, the first police were to capture slaves, which was property.
Absolutely.
And it still is, to this point, is to and this is going to be offensive, but this is what it was built for, is to protect white property and white people.
So
And so
that
we
was the
still have,
foundation, and that's why the culture is what it is. That's why we would not have the Australia experience where someone is polite and apologetic and just want you to get your tail light fixed. That wouldn't happen here because of the foundation of this system being slave catchers. And the people that you caught, well, they didn't have any rights other than you think, well, I don't want to destroy someone's property,
yeah,
since they're probably got a bounty on their head. But if it happens because they were unruly, oh well, nothing will happen. Just like on the police shows, oh, someone's dead, oh well, we had to kill him, he was bad. So that's the whole mentality. And that's why, as long as we think that's okay, that we don't even see people as people, it'll keep happening. And we keep justifying it, trying to find, I think about Trayvon Martin. They kept trying to find, oh, well, he went to school with weed in his bag. So what? What's that gonna do with somebody killing him in cold blood? So
everything is not a death sentence.
Murder.
A traffic stop should not be a death sentence.
Right.
A changing lanes without signaling should not be a death sentence.
Right.
Oh, then we'd have a lot of people given the business here because people down here do not signal.
I don't know. They might
not stop at red lights either.
Yes, they're not executed for it though, and that's the thing is that we have become,
at least the ones we haven't heard of,
a nation that executes people and then tries to find something that they did
justify
that they were criminals to start with. That's why one of the things that I posted on my Instagram was Tyre's skateboarding and his photography, who he was as a person, because he was a son, he was a father, he was someone who was loved, he was a human being. And until we get to the point that we see that these people are human beings first, and that even like people say, well, this is what happens like with Kyle Rittenhouse and how he got off. Well, he got off because then people said, well, these people were bad that he killed. You didn't know that when you killed them, and you going somewhere to protect property. I don't care what gets burned to the ground. Property is still not as important as people.
Right.
Property can be replaced.
Right. Well, I want to say hi to Doug Rains, who's watching us from Tennessee. Feel free to write in your comments. What do you think? Did you watch the video? Do you think we need to stop showing the video? Have we made the point? And I understand Tyre's mother, just like, Mamie Till Mobley, she wanted people to see the horrors of racism so that they could feel horrified. And it did lead to some changes. It motivated Rosa Parks to make that stand or that sit down on the bus, and all the organizing that happened around that. It motivated a lot of action for change, but it didn't really change the hearts of the hardcore racists who weren't sad that it happened. But it did.
Still were willing to throw rocks at a 6-year-old trying to go to school.
Yeah, those people were still out there throwing rocks at a 6-year-old.
And it still doesn't change the fact that instead of going for change, we have Barbara's governor want to just erase us, erase our history, so that white people won't feel uncomfortable, finding out what their ancestors did. Well, if you don't face the past, you can't change the future.
Well, do you think one of the reasons why they're making such a point about this murder is because it was done by Black people? So it's like, see, it's not just us. See, you all are always complaining, but see, it's one of y'all that did it. So that.
No, I don't think that. I think that just goes to show, like I said, it's the culture. It is the culture of policing in this country, and anti-Black violence happens, everywhere.
Yeah,
it happens everywhere, and it happens in our communities, with people from our communities and with people outside of our communities. How many times what do you think would have happened if those Black policemen had pulled over a white guy? Do you think he would have been beaten? Do you think he would have been tased? Do you think he would have been pepper sprayed? Do you think he would have ended up sitting or laying down unconscious for 22 minutes, 23 minutes while no one helped him? No, because
there has been some brutalization of
But there have
by
been.
white police officers, which,
Yes.
as you say, it points to the fact there's something wrong with the policing culture.
It's
we
the
have to
culture.
eliminate. We have to eliminate that position that allows people to behave that way under the guise of serving and protecting, because that's just it's just cruel, it's inhumane, it's inhuman, it is brutal, it's murder, and as long as we're in fear of each other, we're going to condone it. So what they always try to do is present the person who was murdered as potentially dangerous, so people can say, well, but you know, I mean, how would you feel if that person tried to carjack you or broke in your house? So they play on the fears. So until we get rid of the fear that we have of each other, we're going to continue to sort of condone it when it happens, or keep being fed the lie that, well, this was someone who already was doing something criminal
and
anyway.
the lie that he wasn't complying. You
Yeah,
saw them saying
don't
things
comply
that
with
made
murder.
no sense. They pulled him out of his car and told him to get on the ground. He was calm. He said, and they were saying, get on the ground. While he was on the ground, give me your hands. When they had their hands, when they had his hands, because they say these things
for the audio,
for
that
the audio version, so
it
it sounds as if he's not
alive. Right.
Yes, he ran.
We have come such a long way from Rodney King.
Yeah, and we have it. And and people say, well, he ran. Yeah, he should have run because he was in fear of his life.
Right.
And the proof is the fact that he's dead.
Absolutely.
The same way Alton Sterling was running away, and somebody taped the cop shooting him in the back, and then placing his taser and say, oh, he took my taser, and lying about it. And there's a very good, I think it's an Atlantic article that said something about how we need to the reason why the cops are told this is because some pseudoscience that they did, where they're saying how dangerous it was for police officers. But really, policing is like not even in the top 5 of dangerous jobs.
Right. A whole lot more dangerous jobs. Well, Doug says the video needs to be shown. As an Army vet, we wouldn't have treated the enemy the way the cops treated him. Ooh, why did it take 5 cops to take down one man? I believe in the video, the young man was telling the cops to calm down. Is there any truth that a couple of the cops had worked with the young man somewhere? I heard that somewhere, sorry to the family of the young man that was killed. I'd heard some things about that they knew who he was. Somebody knew who he was, and it was some kind of personal beef.
Yes, I heard that. And the reason why I don't want to entertain that, because a lot of rumors are going around.
Yeah.
And once you put those rumors out there, you can't take them back. But that is true that that
kind of behavior, I mean,
he was very calm. He was telling them to calm down.
Calm.
And and that's the
whether it was personal or not, there is absolutely no justification for that kind of treatment.
If it takes you 5 guys
without beating them, 5 people on one, you can't hold somebody. You don't have to hit them.
The thing is that they also hit him after he had been handcuffed.
I mean, the whole thing was there wasn't any justification for them even stopping him, and I think
never found any justification.
Right, we have to make some serious laws, like you can't stop anybody for a tail light or anything. You got your bullhorn. You say, look, we got your license plate. You got a tail light. We're gonna send you a notice in the mail. Make sure you go to court and show that you got it fixed. There shouldn't even been any contact. And I think, I've been talking to some people about legislation that would really make like no contact between motorists and police at all. And they keep saying, but we find drug traffickers. I don't care about drugs. I don't care if people getting high on weed or whatever. I don't care how much weed they got in the car or whatever they got. I don't care. You don't have a right to kill somebody, and you shouldn't be empowered to do that. So I think we're gonna have to.
Right. Naima, when you talk about the bullhorn, I remember when I was living in California and I'm speeding down the highway, And CHP officer comes up beside me and says, green, what was it? I forgot, green Ford, slow down, and it was like windy out there, and I think he didn't want to bother getting out of his car either. And I just slowed down.
That's all it takes.
That's the thing. It's like they can do that. But I've also had police officers who have followed me for a mile and says, "Oh, he was fine," until he saw that I was Black when I made the turn, and then they follow you because they follow you to see what you're going to do.
Yeah, and they try.
Me one time. They don't know if you're going to change lanes like Sandra Bland did. She changed lanes, came up behind her, and she ended up dead. And nobody's going to tell me that was a suicide either. But I've had someone who followed me for a half an hour, and then or a mile up the road, pulled me over on the highway, and then said, "Well, your license plate light is out. You need to get that fixed." And he couldn't give me a ticket for that. But it was like, you just wanted to see how far you'd have to follow me before you could come up with some reason to pull me over. And if I had changed lanes or something, I've had people telling me I was driving erratically in the middle of the night because I was coming home from work.
Right. Oh, goodness. I had a crazy thing in some little small town on the way out of DeKalb from dropping Lavinia off at school. And luckily, I had my white friend with me. They tell you always have a white friend in the car with you. And they pulled, this police officer pulled me over to tell me my car was noisy. And he wrote me a ticket.
It was running.
And when I brought the ticket into the police station in Chicago, they looked at that and said, "Oh, they don't have anything to do down there." And he tore it up.
Yeah.
Because he knows that's what it is. But I think at some point the laws will need to be changed so that there are no more traffic stops at all. I think
if you are in an accident, if you have a fender bender, it's one thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if you exchange information, you don't even need to involve the police. I've had one.
And you don't want to come anyway.
Where the cops, if they're there, they'll come over. They says, "Okay, you take their license. You take their license.
Yeah, let the insurance companies handle it."
That's all.
They don't want to do the paperwork. So Doug says,
are there some safe questions? I mean, trainings that we should be telling our young people who are new drivers how to behave in traffic, how to respond to a police officer pulling them over.
It's a difficult thing at this time because it looked like Tyre did all the right things and they murdered him anyway. And that's what makes it so angerifying when you realize that no matter what you tell your child,
use it. I use it too. I think we made that up.
It'd be in the dictionary. Keep saying it, but when you realize that no matter what we tell our sons and daughters, people who have in their hearts to murder are murderers. That's who they are, and so it doesn't matter what you do. That's who they are. So I mean, we have to come up with a way that we empower our children and ourselves so that we don't feel like we are sitting ducks for some psychopathic person hiding in a blue uniform.
And what Doug says here is, I believe after the cops was done, they fist bump each other.
Yes.
Yes, they did. And before then, there was one cop who was saying when he took off running, they say, "I hope," and he said it more than once, "I hope they stomp his ass."
Yes, yeah, they did. They fist bumped each other, and I hear that. I hope this. Yeah. So I mean, you got sickness.
This is the thing is that okay, because your fat butt had to run, now you're gonna punish them. But the thing is that they
don't want to run after anybody.
But they didn't have to. And that's the thing is that if it's a traffic stop, you already know who that person is because they have the computers right there in the car. They know who is driving. I had a friend who is married to a Spanish. I think he's Mexican. And a Spanish man. And he said that he was driving, he's white, and he was driving his husband's car. And the cops pulled him over, and he says, "I could tell that they were disappointed that they saw a white man in there instead of a Spanish man. See? So because they
Mm.
already knew who the car belonged to.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing is, so he didn't get a ticket, but I believe his husband probably would have if he had been the one driving his own car. So they always know who the car belongs to. They know if it has not been reported stolen. You know, this whole thing about, oh, somebody's driving a nice car, so it might be stolen. You know, if that car has been reported
Right,
stolen. They
right.
have a better database for stolen cars than they do for kidnapped children.
They really do. That's like come somebody want to get their car back though. Their child is in here. But you know,
Yeah.
the thing about it, there are a lot of people at this point who are telling their children, you know, all kinds of things because they're panicked. I mean, you got some people who are feeling like I'm afraid to drive. That's like being terrorized. I don't
Yeah,
want
because that's what terrorists do. They keep you from they
enjoying
disrupt,
life.
Feel fear.
they disrupt your life.
Yeah, they disrupt your life, and that was an act of terrorism, and it was a crime against humanity because
Yes.
all of us who saw it were traumatized, and
Or even just hearing about it, you were
just
traumatized.
hearing about it, it was
Yeah.
traumatizing. So there has to be something that happens as a result of this global tragedy because you know I have host meetings with all of my radio hosts, and the one from London has heard about it. And she was talking about, oh, that's horrible. I can't believe it. And then she hadn't heard that black cops did it. She's like, what? They were black? And yeah, they were, Jana, they were black, you know. So that's the thing. Everybody around the world has heard about it and seen it and is just horrified by it. But something has to happen other than we just wait for the next murder and be horrified
Or
all over again.
that we just use that these guys go down for murder, which they should.
Yeah, and then everybody's
And
okay.
then
Okay,
everybody
they
says,
got
okay,
punished. All right,
justice
it's over.
served.
No,
Because obviously that didn't happen because the people who murdered George Floyd were also convicted, and yet Tyre is dead tonight.
right,
Tyre won't go home to his mother tonight.
right.
So
just
this was 3 weeks ago. See, this has been a while that this happened. It's
so
just coming to light now.
we're seeing the video. So even sending people to prison hasn't stopped it happening. So that
No.
means something else has to happen that stops it from happening. And well, let's see. Doug says, do you think these 5 cops will get the same amount of jail time, more time as the cop that killed George Floyd? What do you 3 ladies think?
I think, well, because theirs was,
What did
it's a different, it was a different,
Situation.
it was a different situation, and it was a
they're all
different,
dead.
well, no, it was a different classification, I think. They're for murder too. So they might get enough, might get more time. There's also, you know, federal statutes that they may have to face because there's killing someone under the color of law. That's a federal thing.
You
We
know,
can talk,
these others have been guilty of it. I mean, what was it? I mean, we've had so many killings here in Chicago. I can't even name all the names. And
Laquan McDonald.
Juan McDonald. I mean, we saw the videos. Well, they didn't show the video of him being shot. They would stop the video just at that point, but you know that that's happened.
Right.
They weren't as free to be as graphic with that one, even though there was somebody who was killed and it was videotaped. But even then, we still got another person. I mean, how many more people around the country have still been killed, even though it was videotaped? And the thing that is upsetting is the feeling that it's like the mayors of the cities feel like they don't have the power to just get rid of all the police and start all over.
Well, you know,
somebody has to have the power to remove people that are killing us.
Going forward, they need to change and forget all this. Oh, they need more training. They need more education.
But
They
you know
need
what?
more,
Having a college degree, because I think all of them had a degree, and I
well,
don't.
but no, not just that. I mean,
I
they
don't think
also,
it's
I didn't
education.
finish. They also need psychological evaluation because a lot of these folks, they probably shouldn't have been cops. You know, you got the high school bullies that were cops and the jocks that were cops, and all these people who have this attitude of you're going to do what I could say. Like I say, I keep saying it's the culture. Yes, they have to change hearts, but they have to change the culture. And part of changing that culture is who you allow to be police officers. It's not just reforming and more training or more body cams
Or
or
more
more,
black people.
it's abolishing that system and coming up with something else.
Well, that's the thing. You got body cams that was supposed to protect you, because then now it's going to be videotape. Well,
They
people
just
still
learned
get
how to
killed.
perform for them.
Right. Black. Yeah, right. They just learn how to perform for them. Just to say stuff to make it sound like they're doing the right thing. And thought was okay. Well, we need more blacks. Okay. Well, we got that. We need more women. Well, we got that. Both blacks and women have killed people, so that's not it. I mean,
so true.
Okay, well, we need to convict. We need to charge more of them and have them go to jail. Okay, we did that. We still got people killed. So we've done everything. Oh well, we need to teach our children how to respond. Okay, well, Tyre did all that. He was calm. He complied.
Yes.
They murdered him anyway. So none of that's working.
You know what? You know what they can do? They can stop letting the taxpayers foot the bill.
Yeah.
I always say, you know what? Take it out of their
Pay the
pension
damages.
fund.
It comes out of their pension.
Get rid of qualified immunity.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. No, you can't just kill somebody and you're automatically, because you were wearing a uniform that day, or maybe you were off duty and you were carrying your off-duty gun. No, get rid of qualified immunity. You shoot someone. If I shoot someone, even if that person comes through my house, I'm still going to have to go see somebody about that, you
Right.
know? And that's the one thing. Get rid of that. Hit them in the pension fund. Stop making us pay for these settlements.
Right.
Make the fraternal order of police
Make them
take it out of their pension fund. All of a sudden, you'll see these people show a whole lot more restraint. And you get convicted, you lose everything.
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah.
You don't get. Let them be able to be sued personally. Sometimes
Yeah.
the only thing that really works in this country is money.
Well, you know, if that's what motivates people to do right, if it's not because they really care, and for these people, it really isn't. They actually didn't care. Absolutely didn't
They
care.
didn't care. They
So,
didn't care.
yeah, you need to
They
lose
were having a great time beating on somebody
Yeah.
who was 145 pounds.
Right. So since you didn't care about his family, well, we need to let your family feel the pain of your decision to take a life, and you need to lose all of your pension. But I don't think it's right that, you know, suddenly everybody's going to get outraged and righteous because it was done by black people, and we still got, you know, the white officers that don't get the same.
They get investigation, they get administrative duty.
Right.
Okay, you know what? When you have
And they
something
commit the same murder.
fired right away.
Right.
Just like they were. They fired right
They can be
away.
Fired right away.
And you're charged with murder.
Yes. That has to be the way.
That has to be the baseline.
The board. Yes.
That's the
Kill
baseline.
somebody, you're fired, and then, like I said, you lose your pension.
End of story.
Well, due process. Well, did they give due process? No. Okay, you didn't give none, you don't get none.
And that's the thing is that, yeah, you will have due process. Now you can go to trial and then let's see what happens. If it's justifiable, that's fine. But these elite squads where they all get all hyped up and hepped up, and and I have seen cops who approach something that is so minor and they are so aggressive. There's no need for that kind of aggressive talk. We had cops one night, a guy was lost. I don't know if he was drunk or what, but he was lost. And he knocked on our door and it scared us all. And Sean went down and he says, you know, can you help me? Because he had opened the screen door. So it's like you're kind of trying to step into the house. Yeah, so Sean kind of got started. He was like, get over on the porch. Just wait here. I'll call somebody. So he calls the cops because, like I always say, white people have a different relationship. Mm-hmm. And this guy, English wasn't his first language, but he could speak English. And when the cops came, they were so aggressive to him that Sarah was really angry. She's like, why do they have to talk to him? Now, eventually they calmed down and says, okay, why don't somebody take you home? I think he was like supposed to be in Chelsea instead of in East Boston, which is the next town over. But they came at him so aggressively. It was.
And he just needed directions.
Yeah, you know, they start they escalate
They
first.
escalated it. Yeah.
You
And that's
know,
what they
and the
do.
guy, he was scared, he was lost, he didn't know where he was. You know, we always have a porch light on, so I guess he thought, and he wasn't thinking, okay, I'm gonna open the door and maybe knock or whatever. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
scared us, but you didn't have to have the cops because he was waiting for them on the porch. You
Yeah.
didn't have to have the cops come out, you know,
What are you doing?
what are you doing? And that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah, bad.
they need to understand that everybody isn't a perp. You cannot
Yeah.
go through your life
Most
and
people are not.
interfere.
Andy of Mayberry, they are not.
No, and
Yeah, they're probably
everybody is
Barney.
either if you're not on the job, you're a perp, and they have that mindset,
Yeah.
and they have to stop thinking that every citizen is out to get them. Because if you are always in fear for your life, find another job.
Yeah, you can't do this job. Well, Mama Bonfire. Yeah, Mama AZ. She says, thank us for this show. Yes, thank us. The universal spirit. Thank us. And Doug says, here in my hometown of Greenville, Tennessee, when the cops pull someone over, there is usually about 2 or 3 cop cars behind the vehicle. So
Yes.
why you got to have 3 cars if you run a stoplight? Why?
Or you have a tail light out.
Oh yeah, your tail light is out. I mean, really. So, like you said, that mindset, they're already hyped up for something. It's like coming from a pep rally. Okay, let's go, let's
Yes,
get them.
that's exactly right.
Kill them. I mean, that's what it sounds like.
Yes.
Let me see. And Doug says, I'm enjoying your show. Thank you for answering my question. Well, thank you, Doug, for tuning in. Join us every week right here on Three Black Moms. I think it would be good if we did have, and we'll see if we can get perhaps a retired police officers. We don't have to worry about, retaliation or any other repercussions, but to be able to speak honestly about what is the real problem. Is there a lot of corruption? Is there part of the corruption because they have arrest quotas that they are given? They have ticket quotas that they're given? Because, I mean, they're really just basic fundraisers for these cities. That's why
a lot of
under pressure to find something that somebody did. They can either ticket them or arrest them for to raise funds for the city. I mean, let's put it on the table and be honest. Is that part of the incentive? Is that part of what causes the corruption to grow? Because they're operating under a certain kind of pressure to arrest a certain amount of people and ticket a certain amount of people. So it's really not about trying to find people doing wrong. It's about trying to find people.
And are traffic stops necessary for something minor like a broken tail light, or, even if you run a stop sign, if you didn't, I mean, you can run a stop sign. I can see somebody pulling you over and giving you a ticket, but you already know who they are. Is that if something if that minor is going to become deadly, do we even need to have police officers with guns making traffic stops?
No.
And now, you hate to think that there are so many police officers that are wicked. Surely the percentage is not that great, but they're highlighted because the ones that are caught doing wrong, their behavior is so horrific. But where are all the good police officers? I remember years ago when I worked for a magazine, a Christian magazine, and we interviewed some police officers, and all of these police officers had a completely different attitude from what we're finding today. Number one, these guys got together and prayed together every morning and prayed for their people that they were going to be running into. They had a sense of servanthood that was kind of shocking, but these were their lives. They felt that they had been called to this duty as police officers. They were servants. They're representing the Lord in their behavior. They're not going to do anything that's going to cast aspersions on the Almighty. But it seemed like there were only a few of them. Why does it seem that there are so many that are just so corrupt in their behavior and attitude?
Well, let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question about the ones that that do the whole thing. They pray and they're really wanting to serve the public. How do they respond when they see these kind of actions? Do they speak up? Can they speak
Right.
up? Are they
I would
not
like
allowed
to know.
to speak?
Yes,
would like
because
to
You know
this
what Dr. King said about the good people who say nothing. That's part of the
yes,
problem.
yes, that's exactly it. And I want to say, if you have 100 cops who are good, 10 bad cops who are bad, and nobody speaks up and checks the 10, you have 110 bad cops.
There it is.
Because if you
The
are
silence
going
is
to,
consent.
if you are going to be part of the culture that it, that lets it go by, don't keep saying it's a few bad apples, because but because they said, oh, it's just a few bad apples. Yeah, but you know what? If you keep a bad apple in with the whole bunch goes bad.
Yeah. So
Try
that's
it
the thing.
sometime with fruit.
The good ones
The
need
whole
to
bunch.
speak up.
That's why when you get home with your fruit and you see like the rotten strawberries and stuff, you throw those
Throw
out.
those out.
Pick those out. That's
Everything else
right.
rotten.
That's
So
right.
if you say, oh, it's just a few bad apples, if you're not getting
Keep
rid of
them in
those,
the barrel.
yeah, you're ruining the barrel. So let's
Mhm.
stop talking about, well, it's not so many of them, because it's all of them if they don't check the other ones. Because
Yeah.
you'll see that a lot of them, they will have these they will have these different complaints. They will have citizens complaints. In fact, Chicago PD, one of my Dick Wolf shows, had a thing where one of the young cops saw a bad cop, and yet he had gotten into policing because of those kind of cops, and yet he had to keep silent because
I
it
saw that episode. I know the one you're talking about.
Yep. Yep.
Wasn't that kind of what happened? I didn't see the movie Training Day, the one that Denzel Washington, got the award for, because he was so
Yes.
bad. But it wasn't that a lot of it where
Yes.
people who are sometimes the supervisors, I mean, that's the way that they're trained, and that's the example they're setting. And those are the ones that are, awarded and praised and everything. So when they do wrong, everybody's quiet. So Doug says, I watched Newsmax a lot, and they had cops on there, or retired cops, that were disgusted with what the 5 cops did. And
yes,
I'm sure that
it was the same way.
disgusted.
It was the same way on CNN. They had people who were disgusted with what they did, but what is your nobody's trying to show that what they did was right at this point. It was so egregious, but the thing is, what they talked to one of the cops who still felt kind of bad, but he still tried to justify it. So
I mean, it's just like Emmett Till. You had to see the horror of it so that you could feel that it was wrong, because there was a lot of people before that funeral. Well, he did whistle at that white woman, and trying to justify stuff. Somebody being murdered.
Admit it now. That old bag is still out
it
there.
Didn't even happen.
And it never happened. And I still think that her 80-some-year-old self should go to jail.
Now, this reminds me of this movie Courageous by the McKendrick brothers, and it was like the police movie that was very instrumental in speaking to a lot of people, because it actually showed a police officer who had to turn in his best friend, and it was, I don't want to give away the whole thing. There are a lot of things that happen in this movie, Courageous, with these police officers who are all trying to do the right thing, but people who are whistleblowers are not, they're not respected. Whistleblowers are not, they're not treated well. When you become a whistleblower, you are putting your life on the line.
That's right.
Especially when
was a real story.
Yeah,
Serpico was a real story.
It's a real story.
And
when you have people that are carrying guns, and you've made people angry, you can mysteriously turn up dead, and no one will say anything. So that's the underlying fear that the good ones have if they do speak up. So even if you have that 100 good police officers and the 10 bad ones, but the 10 bad ones can Just like you can have 10 bullies in a school of 100 people, and 10 of them are bullies, and everybody takes the bullying because they're afraid of those 10. So at what point do we decide to get rid of the bullies? Just get rid of all of them. But you can't do that unless somewhere at the top it's being condoned. And that, you know, we're in the middle of mayoral candidates election
right now.
and everybody's blaming everybody and saying, well, you know, this person didn't do anything to stop crime, that person didn't do anything to stop crime. But it's not a one person thing. You have to,
and they walk into it with a lot of mess that was there before them.
yeah. And a whole system that condones it. So I mean, you know, we kind of back to the heart. You have to have a heart that says we cannot have a society where people are allowed to brutalize people under any circumstances. We cannot have a position that we feel that gives people the right to murder with impunity. That can't happen. We can't treat
they
people
can
like
pull you over and stop you and search you and frisk you.
None of that should happen.
Violate your rights. And then you're supposed to take it that they can stop you and ask for ID. There's none of your business who I am. I'm not doing anything. And people say that you're supposed to always obey the police. The police are not gods.
No, and that's the point. They're not gods, and they think they are, and that's why they operate with impunity, because they believe they have the power of the law in their hands. And until we strip them of all that power, they're going to keep doing that. So I know we've got to go. Oh yeah, it's about time to wrap up. And we want you all to comment, because this is not going away. Unfortunately, we hate to say, you know, it may happen again, but until we change something,
it will happen again within the next week or so. Unfortunately, just like all the mass shootings.
Yeah, right.
Mass shooting today, you know. So
the question I'd like to ask, and please, you know, write it on our Facebook page, YouTube page, 3 Black Moms. Do you think America will get to the point where they can be like other civilized nations and no one carry guns, not the police and not the citizens? Can we get to that point? Do you believe we can? And if so, what would it take for that to happen? That's my question. So what do you all think? Do you think we can get to that point? Other nations have done it.
Other nations have done it. We will not. We're too enamored. You know, I hate to be cynical. You know,
I don't think that's cynical. I think you're seeing the truth. We're at a place where we cannot go back. We can't. You know, we can't go into the Wayback Machine and change it. We can't go back to the future and change it. You know, it is what it is. We have to find ways to move forward with what we have, because there is no going back.
Well, I would say this, and thank you, Doug, for all of your contributions. I will say that we will get to that point. We're talking about a number. How many people
I'm just hoping
to die
our children
by gun violence before we choose to do this? So it is a number, but it will happen. It's our decision as to how many people have to die for us to get to that point, but we will get to that point. So it's our decision. How many more people have to die before we choose to remove the guns from our culture?
Well, that's the thing, is that I think we'll probably burn up the planet before that happens. So,
well, you know, I just think that we just need a generation of people to die out, and that what they had to do with the children of Israel. 40 years,
right, that generation
just die.
But it didn't even end with that generation, because further on down, you had another group of people that had to happen to. Yeah.
Well, might have to happen a couple of generations, but we will get there. Didn't Dr. King say we will get to the promised land?
Because he had been to the mountaintop.
That's right. So we'll get there. Well, we got to go. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you all, and we will see you next week on
3 Black Moms.
Until then, I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Barbara. We are 3 Black Moms. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're 3 Black Moms.